In the early 1900s, bacterial infections that are easily treated today were often fatal. Diseases like pneumonia, sepsis, and wound infections had very few treatment options, and once infections set in, physicians had little they could do. Everything changed with the discovery of antimicrobial drugs. But here's the important thing to understand. Treating an infection is not just as simple as giving an antibiotic. Healthcare providers have to identify the organism, determine which drugs will work, and choose a treatment that will eliminate the pathogen while minimizing harm to the patient. Hi, and welcome back to my channel, Learning Biology with Dr. Vanessa, where I take difficult biological concepts and make them easy to understand. In this video, we're going to walk through the principles of antimicrobial therapy, how antimicrobial drugs were developed, how clinicians determine which drug to use, and the laboratory methods used to test whether microbes are susceptible or resistant to treatment. Modern antimicrobial therapy began in the early 20th century with the discovery of drugs capable of selectively targeting microbes without severely harming the host. Antimicrobial drugs are chemicals used to treat infections by killing microorganisms or inhibiting their growth. Though these drugs have greatly reduced the incidence of certain infections, they have not eradicated infectious disease. For several decades after the discovery of antibiotics like penicillin, scientists believed infectious diseases might eventually be eliminated. However, the emergence of antimicrobial resistance has led us into what many scientists call the post-antibiotic era, a time when some infections are once again becoming difficult to treat because microbes are evolving resistance to many of the drugs we rely on. This makes it more important than ever to use antimicrobial drugs carefully and appropriately. The goal of antimicrobial therapy is to eliminate the pathogen responsible for an infection while causing the least possible harm to the host. For a drug to be effective, it must be able to reach the site of infection, remain active in the body as long as needed, yet be safely and easily broken down and excreted, and be toxic to the infectious agent and non-toxic to the host. This concept is known as selective toxicity. Selective toxicity works because microbial cells differ from human cells in key ways. For example, bacterial cells have cell walls made of peptidoglycan, ribosomes that differ from human ribosomes, and unique metabolic pathways. Antimicrobial drugs exploit these differences to target microbes without severely damaging human tissues. Many antimicrobial drugs originate from natural compounds produced by microorganisms. Certain bacteria and fungi naturally produce chemicals that inhibit competitors in their environment. Scientists have harnessed these compounds and modified them to create drugs. The greatest number of current antibiotics are derived from bacteria in the genera Streptomyces and Bacillus, and the molds in the genera Penicillium and Cephalosporium. Before treatment begins, clinicians ideally need to answer several critical questions. What organism is causing the infection? What is that microorganism's susceptibility or sensitivity to various drugs? And what is the overall medical condition of the patient? The first step in treatment is identifying the organism responsible for infection. The most accurate approach is to collect a sample from the patient, such as blood, urine, sputum, or a wound swab, and send it to the laboratory. There, microbiologists attempt to isolate and identify the pathogen using microscopy, culturing techniques, and biochemical or molecular tests. Once the organism is identified, doctors can choose a drug that specifically targets it. However, in many real clinical situations, doctors cannot wait several days for lab results, especially if the infection is severe. In those cases, physicians often begin treatment using test data or an informed guess. This decision is based on the patient's symptoms, medical history, and the type of infection suspected. For example, If a patient presents with symptoms of strep throat, a doctor may start treatment for Streptococcus pyogenes even before the lab confirmation comes back. Sometimes the infectious agent cannot be isolated at all, either because the organism is difficult to grow in the laboratory or because the patient has already started antibiotics. In these situations, doctors may rely on epidemiological statistics, data about which pathogens most commonly cause certain infections in particular populations or locations. For example, Escherichia coli is responsible for the majority of urinary tract infections, so physicians often begin treatment targeting that organism while awaiting test results. Once the organism is identified, microbiologists determine which antimicrobial drugs are most effective against it. This process helps determine which drugs will effectively inhibit or kill the pathogen, allowing clinicians to choose the most appropriate treatment. Even when doctors begin treatment based on an informed guess, susceptibility testing helps confirm that the drug chosen will work or indicates if the therapy should be adjusted. There are two common methods that are used. In the Kirby-Bauer technique, bacterial cells are spread evenly across an agar plate. Small paper discs containing different antimicrobial drugs are then placed on the surface. As the drugs diffuse through the agar, they inhibit bacterial growth if the organism is susceptible. Clear zones, called zones of inhibition, will form around the effective drugs. The size of these zones helps determine whether the organism is susceptible, intermediate susceptible, or resistant to each antibiotic. The larger the zone, the more susceptible the bacteria is to that particular drug. If there is no zone, then that means that that bacteria is resistant to that drug. There's also the tube dilution tests. These are more sensitive and quantitative than the Kirby-Bauer technique, meaning they provide precise information about how much of a drug is needed to inhibit microbial growth. In this technique, a series of test tubes is prepared containing liquid growth medium and progressively decreasing concentrations of an antimicrobial drug. Each tube is then inoculated with the same amount of the microorganism being tested and incubated to allow growth. After incubation, the tubes are examined for turbidity or cloudiness, which indicates microbial growth. Tubes that remain clear show that the drug concentration was sufficient to inhibit the organism. From this test, scientists determine the minimum inhibitory concentration, or MIC. The MIC is defined as the lowest concentration of an antimicrobial drug that prevents visible growth of a microorganism after incubation. This value is important because it helps clinicians understand the minimum amount of drug needed to effectively control the infection, allowing for more accurate and effective treatment decisions. Once the susceptibility of a microorganism to different antimicrobial drugs has been determined, the next important consideration is safety for the patient. A drug may be very effective at inhibiting or killing a microbe, but it must also be safe enough to use in the human body. This is where the concept of the therapeutic index becomes important. The therapeutic index is a ratio of the dose of a drug that is toxic to the host compared with the minimum effective dose against the microorganism. In simple terms, it tells us how safe a drug is. A drug with a high therapeutic index means there is a large difference between the effective dose and the toxic dose, making it generally safer for patients. In contrast, a low therapeutic index means the effective dose is close to the toxic dose, so the drug must be used much more carefully and monitored closely. Choosing an antimicrobial therapy involves several important considerations. Physicians must determine which drug will be most effective against the pathogen and whether the drug can reach the site of infection in the body at a sufficient concentration. They must also consider the patient's medical history, including age, overall health status, and any pre-existing conditions that could influence how the drug works in the body. Factors such as allergies, underlying liver or kidney disease, and other health issues can influence how a drug is processed in the body and whether it is safe to use. In addition, physicians must consider other medications the patient may already be taking, since drug interactions can affect the effectiveness of treatment or increase the risk of side effects. Because of these variables, antimicrobial therapy sometimes needs to be adjusted for individual patients. For example, a patient with a penicillin allergy cannot safely receive penicillin-based antibiotics, so physicians must choose an alternative drug. Patients with digestive disorders, severe nausea, or conditions that interfere with absorption may not be able to take medications orally, so the antibiotic may need to be administered intravenously or by injection instead. So far, we've focused on how clinicians choose antimicrobial drugs, from identifying the pathogen to testing drug susceptibility and selecting the most effective treatment. But once a drug is chosen, there are another set of important questions. How exactly do these drugs work? What types of antimicrobial drugs exist? And why are so many microbes becoming resistant to them? In the next video, we'll explore the major groups of antimicrobial drugs, how they attack microbial cells, and how resistance develops, one of the most important challenges in modern medicine. If you found the content of this video helpful and want to keep learning how microbes affect the body, please make sure to subscribe, give this video a like, and turn on notifications so that you never miss out on new content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.